Okay. This is the planning board meeting of the 17th of May of town of Kennebunkport. So attendance, we have a full house. The entire board is here and the two alternates. So we have everybody here. So that's good now. Did everybody look at the minutes from the 3rd?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, do I have a motion on the topic?
I would move to accept the minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, so Ed,
Yes.
Approve.
approve, approve?
Approve.
Okay, so that's all set. So we have 3 initial reviews on the docket today. First one is the Mills Road subdivision, which has a different name now, but anyway. So Michael Tadema-Weidland is here to start. I'm sure you'll introduce anyone else who needs to present. This is a final subdivision plan. This is the initial presentation on the final plan.
Hi, thank you.
So,
Mike Tadema-Wieland, I'm a civil engineer with Teradyne Consultants. I'm here with the applicant, Pat Dooling, and Jeff Bowley, who is the former owner of this parcel, and he's now consulting for Pat because he's been around the block once or twice doing this sort of project. So we were here, we've been here a couple times on this project. The last 2 with this layout were April 14th and then March 1st. And on March 1st, this board approved the preliminary subdivision plan. And since that time, not much has changed, but I'll give you a couple updates on one small change, and then some of the steps we've taken to sort of get us over the finish line here. So on the existing lot, there was a small encroachment of a barn from the abutting property, from the Priscilla Spang property. And so to remedy that, that landowner and the applicant agreed to a land swap. So it was about 3,000 square feet that went from one lot to the other and vice versa. So now that barn is completely on the abutter's property. There was no change in net area. It occurred entirely in the proposed open space. So I don't think there's much real impact or consequence to the plan, but just kind of, just for record keeping purposes. That has taken place. It's been recorded, and we provided deeds in the final application package that we submitted. Since we received preliminary approval, we've also responded to the peer review comments from Acorn Engineering. We hadn't had a chance to respond to those when we were last here, but we did sort of, I would say, classify them as such that the responses wouldn't change the overall design, and they really didn't. A lot of it had to do with technical calculations related to stormwater management. So we've addressed all of those comments, and we've provided a letter accounting for all of those in the application package we submitted. The applicant revised the homeowners association documents to address a lot of the items that we talked about with the board. So if there are any, and we submitted a revised copy of those. If there are any questions on those, we're happy to answer them. And we have submitted to the DEP for a stormwater permit and for a NRPA permit, which is for the wetland impacts, which also goes to the Army Corps of Engineers. We've received one round of technical review comments from the stormwater engineer and responded to those already. They were, again, very minor comments related to how we are calculating stormwater treatment. None of it changed the plan, but really, that's all to say, we're working through that process. We feel good where we're at with the DEP. And although, we don't yet have approval, we think it's imminent. And so tonight, we're really trying to get ahead of the process and really get you folks comfortable with the final plan so that when DEP does issue their approval, we can come back and there will be no more items to discuss and we can just be in and out of here quickly. So if possible, we're requesting completeness tonight. And again, understanding we don't have DEP approval, I'm not sure that's possible, but if it is, we're requesting completeness. And if not, please let us know if there's anything other than just the DEP approval that's outstanding. As well as if this board is gonna require a second public hearing for the final application, then we'd request that be scheduled now, and so we can start that process as well, just to sort of, again, get out ahead of the process in order to cross a lot of these requirements off the list before the DEP approval comes in. So that's it. We're happy to answer any questions. Thanks for the time.
Just to clarify, if we declare it complete, we usually have a public hearing 2 weeks later, or, the next meeting,
Understood.
so. Okay, so Mike, since you were our lead on this, why don't I let you lead off with questions based on the new plan we just received?
Yeah, went through the responses from Acorn and I didn't have any real issues with that. Had one minor housekeeping thing, a zip code for Fenn Farms LLC. I couldn't find one.
02118.
01
02118.
02118.
Got it.
Massachusetts, yeah.
Then the individual fire suppression systems were 13D? Is that how it's?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Jeff, yeah, I believe that's
That's
I
the
believe
one.
that's the
Yeah,
the
so that was, I was trying to
NFPA
read my
code.
notes and
Yeah.
I couldn't find, so that was in there.
Yeah, I think that's a building code.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an NFPA standard.
Standard, but 13D is the right one and that's
Correct.
the one we're going to. Okay,
Yep.
that's what I thought and I just wanted to confirm that. Okay. And the new road's gonna be Timber Way, or did we change that?
Oh, no, that is,
Largely
did you
says
find a
to-
reference to Timber Way?
I thought it was, the new road was gonna be called Timber Way. I don't know where I got that.
No.
Do we have a name for it?
Yes, we do. It is. Is it Prospect Reserve Way? And the subdivision name is Prospect Reserve Subdivision.
One thing on that, just to be clear, that's the Public Safety Committee that reviews and approves proposed road names.
Okay.
So that's something we should probably run through them. I don't think we have any conflicts out there with that one. It's a
No, I
unique
mean, I
one.
didn't have any
Doesn't
problem with
sound
TBD way.
common.
That was in the bulk of this document.
Yeah,
No.
I was just
But
trying to
yeah,
figure out
that's-
what it was called. I had kind of different references.
That's something that should get filed with Public Safety Committee.
Yeah, it's not our business.
Yeah, so nothing deep and technical from me.
Okay, well, let me start here with my deputy.
All right, okay. Well, I've been going through this treatise, and I have a few questions,
Sure.
especially on the HOA.
Mhm.
This is not what we talked about.
Okay.
In terms of bird strikes, there's not a word in there about it. about keeping screens on the window, which is the cheapest way to keep down minimal impact. And we also talked about restricting the use of fertilizers and pesticides. You know, as you start developing lands that are really marginal and probably shouldn't be developed, but, you know, people want houses, you get into forested wetlands and places that really are very sensitive to fertilizers and pesticides. You've got a lot of bird population in there. You're trying to keep corridors for wildlife, which means the birds are going to fly down those corridors as well. When you're in, and I look at all the significant wetlands on this thing, it just amazes me. And I really can't approve an application that doesn't take into account protection of wildlife. We've lost 4 billion birds. Half of those birds are window strikes, basically, and 40% of those are due to residents' window strikes. And it's becoming more and more apparent we have to protect them. So I need to see something that says that any building, any development has to have at the minimal screens on windows and patio doors and things like that that are clear glass, unless you want to spend the money and put in bird-proof windows, bird strike-proof windows, which
Sure.
I understand are very expensive.
May I ask a question on this? Is there a performance standard related to any of this, related to, how could this be wrapped into a performance standard, I guess?
There are performance standards. I'm not sure where it is in the subdivision regs. I know it's in the land use ordinance where there, you know, you don't have significant impact on wildlife.
Okay,
Okay, if you look at 1010A in the land use ordinance.
okay.
Okay. And maybe it's for building of houses, but you're going to have something like 12, 13 lots on this property. And you're going to be building houses in a significant wildlife area. You've already seen there are spotted turtles here, ribbon snakes. There's a lot more. If you've got that, you've got a lot more. And you're going to have wood warblers and, you know, species that are extremely important to taking out mosquitoes and ticks, for example.
Sure.
You know, and you really don't want to reduce those populations.
Absolutely.
And under that comes in your fertilizers and pesticides. Fertilizers, people just slop it on. They go and buy a bag of Scots and just dump it on, and you've got pesticides and fertilizers mixed, diazinon, which runs right into wetlands. And it causes significant problems. I
Yeah.
can tell you, because my neighbor, you know, the B&B, I'm sure uses something on his lawn, because the next thing I knew, all the lilies, the wild lilies that I had growing on the side there are now gone. You know,
I'm sure you saw the section of the HOA that talks about, there is a section that talks about
Yes.
how it's
best
to be.
practices and so forth. I've gone right through that, but it doesn't restrict pesticides and it doesn't restrict fertilizers. And people are going to
Sure.
still spray stuff on windy days. I
Sure.
mean, they hire applicators, and I've had to yell at applicators, this is not the kind of day like today you can spray, you know, a pesticide or an herbicide even. You know, you just have to wait for conditions to be right.
Sure,
And we
and I think
also-
that's what the best practices are getting at.
Yes,
right, and
they
s-
are, but there's no penalty for not following best practices, and we talked about penalties.
So there is a penalty mechanism in here that allows the HOA to really enact monetary penalties against folks that don't
Follow
follow
best
any of the
That's fine, but
requirements of the
you
HOA.
need to really restrict people's use of pesticides in that area. And we talked about not putting down pesticides like herbicides and tick control and so forth, except for spot control.
Sure.
And then they had to get the approval for that spot control. And I don't see any of that in there.
Approval from I'm
The
sorry,
HOA.
refresh my memory,
Approval
from the
from-
HOA.
Yes. And that at least causes people to think about what they're doing.
Sure. And that's pesticides. So fertilizer's a little more difficult, right? Because.
Fertilizer is very difficult, but you're not recommending a slow-release organic fertilizer, and that's what you really need in there,
Okay.
if they're gonna put it on their lawns.
I think a slow release,
There's one mention maybe in there,
Yeah.
one mention. But it's definitely not the way we talked about.
understood,
That.
yeah. I will go back and review those, and I'll go over it with the applicant, and we'll beef that section up.
It just needs to cause people to think a little bit about it. You're not planning on putting in any more lots in this development, are you?
No.
Because I see some references in there once in a while that makes me wonder about it.
No, I mean, if I mean, like any subdivision, if additional lots were desired, I mean, you'd have to get the approval of the entire homeowners association, then you'd have to come back to the
The
planning board.
planning board,
You know,
right.
No, actually, while the developer is still in charge, he can go to the planning board anytime he wants, but
Well, that's true
don't
as well,
expect
I
we're gonna
guess.
be
Yeah.
real happy to see him.
Right, yeah, I would say if he wanted additional lots, he would be asking for it now, right, so.
The other question I have is, have you ID'd the large trees on C31?
Yes, and there are very few of them.
Very few, that's what I thought I
There's only
remembered.
two or three. And they're actually on sheet C 2.0.
Yeah.
And there's a couple right in the roadway, and I think we discussed, the belief is this parcel was probably affected by the fire, the Great Fire of whatever year it was, right? What was it?
47.
47, and.
That was a while ago, you would still
Yeah.
expect some large trees.
Yeah, or maybe it was harvested. I don't know its whole history, but they are identified on sheet C 2.0.
Yeah.
I read about it.
You know, I was comparing the high-intensity soil survey to what you have probably the best is C31 here. And where you indicate where you're going to clear in a lot, which is a lot of clearing. But it would, there's no indication. Your four actual vernal pools, the significant ones, are out of the area.
Yeah,
So, but you have a lot of non-significant vernal pools, and you have a lot of scantic soils and nastig soils especially. And it would really be helpful to see if you could shade in where those soils are on the map C31.
3.1.
Yeah, because
Sure.
that shows where you're clearing the lots and everything. I think you've avoided most of it. But in trying to compare the two, there was no place on the maps where I could compare where those soils were
Yeah.
and where those non-significant vernal pools were to where the lots were and where the lots were gonna be cleared and where the road was.
Understood. So, yeah, I can add that, and yeah, I understand how that
Even
can be
if you
helpful.
just added in shading, it
Yep.
would be very, very helpful.
So you're particularly interested in the scantic and any
The nasty,
any of the poor-
nasty.
poorly drained or
Yeah, the
very
poorly drained soils.
which are
is-
really wetlands,
The
for the most
wetlands,
part.
in other words, the wetlands,
yeah.
yeah.
And so they are shown on this plan, but it's a busy,
They are,
it's a
but
busy plan, so I
They're not
can
very
see.
well shown, and
Right.
it would really be helpful to see where you're clearing,
Yeah.
where
And-
you're thinking of clearing and where
Yeah.
the
So-
proximity of that cleared area is to the wetlands.
Yeah, and I can certainly do that. What I will say is, the only lots that contain wetlands are lot 3 and the driveway for lot 12. I
You have to cross
I
a
believe.
stream there, I think, for 12.
Yes, yep. And there's a small finger on lot 6, and then lot 8 has some wetlands on the sort of on the perimeter, but none of the proposed wetland impacts, and none of the wetland impacts that we're permitting are on proposed lots. So the proposal is that no wetlands will be impacted for lot development. And that's indicated on the plans, and there's a note on the plans saying if anyone does or does wish to fill wetlands for lot development, that lot owner has to come back to the planning board
Right,
and go through the DEP.
right. No, I saw that. It's just that I
I-
just couldn't reconcile the soil survey to the lot
Yep, I
clearing and
can-
everything. So,
I can hatch that so it's a little more clear.
and according to what you said in here, you need one more permit, which is the MDOT. Okay. All right, that's all I
Yeah,
had.
and that's just a driveway entrance permit, or not a drive, but it's an entrance permit.
Entrance
so it's a-
permit,
Because it's
yeah.
a state road, it's a fairly simple,
Ed?
No,
project.
Nothing, okay.
All
Scott?
set. Yep, all set.
Well, I just have a couple of comments. I thought this was really good. Thanks for all this. It's really, anyway, in the HOA agreement, section 3.18, you talk about pesticides,
Mm-hmm.
but could you add herbicides as well in that section, just to reinforce?
Yes,
Yes.
yep,
But I didn't see it in there, and I'm glad you mentioned fertilizer, but anyway, just take a look through that section a little more.
yeah, we'll certainly beef that up.
All right. And then on your drawing C 3.0, which you have on the board there, could you just double check the radiuses for your roundabout? Because there could be some change, impact based on the new fire truck. Just making sure it's big enough. And let me just say that, you know, a radius of 50 feet is kind of my expectation, not only on the interior, but also on the approach. You know, you've got that radius going to the northwest, right there as it enters the roundabout. You may want to just double check the roundabout, okay? It's the size of the roundabout.
Okay, yeah, and I know Werner has recently sent me some
Yeah.
updated diagrams.
Okay.
So I will, I'll compare it to the latest.
Thank you. And I think that's it. That's all.
No questions, just a comment. I want to echo Nina's comments. And I think she speaks for a number of people on the board and the community as well. As this town develops more and more marginal land, paying attention to the reason why people want to live here is a really important thing to protect that. Otherwise, it ends up looking like somewhere else.
Thank you.
Oh, could I also just ask, so you mentioned in your introduction, you talked about the NRPA.
Yes.
So as Corps of Engineers, so is that in progress or is that a moot point?
It's in progress.
It's in progress. So you got the EEP, the DEP, and the NRPA.
Well, the NRPA is reviewed by the DEP. So the DEP's got, they're gonna issue two permits. They review them concurrently, so it
Okay.
all goes in as one application, and then they issue one approval, and it'll cover the stormwater permit,
Okay,
and then it'll cover the wetland impacts as well.
great, thank you.
So they sort of look at it holistically.
Okay, thanks.
Now, I did notice in your attachment 15, there are all sorts of government agencies you talk to.
Yeah.
Now, do you have responses from anyone? This one, okay, there's a Dear Michael, that's a response. But,
I think most of them responded.
okay, I just want to make sure that we've covered all the bases. So,
Do you have a letter from the Historical
yeah, that's. the one.
Preservation Society?
Let me see. I believe we do.
I remember seeing one, I thought, in one of the.
all I saw in the historic was other adjacent houses that they considered interesting, I
Yeah,
guess.
that, well, they want photos and they want these forms filled out for any house that is more than 50 years old,
Yeah.
abutting it.
But usually they will send a letter basically clearing you of any.
Yes, and I believe we received that. Let me check on that and I'll have an answer for you next time, yeah.
Mixed up with what I saw.
Okay. Any more comments? I think, so we'd like to see an update to the HOA attachment.
Yep.
And otherwise, I think it's,
I think we had a couple of minor items, I think some of them were addressed, one, we talked about the DOT entrance permit that was needed. I think we still have, electric utilities are still identified, as Kennebunk Light and Power on the cover sheet, or on the cover sheet of the plan. I didn't see on there the, existing septics and wells within 200 feet of the property. I don't know if those showed up on a sheet or not.
Okay. Let me
But I
double
know
check that.
I know we do have some directly close by on the abutter's property.
Yeah.
And we had identified a no-cut buffer along Route 9 for the first lot.
Pardon me, what was that, Warner?
No-cut buffer.
Oh,
There's
no
a
cut.
requirement in the subreg, for the 50-foot no-cut, unless that's something that the board wants to waive. And I think those were the,
That's the.
I think those were the
That's the
big ones.
conservation,
Said no pet buffer.
group, and I've met with them. And,
Yeah, we got all the other test pit info and, solid waste letter, so that's fine. And then the nitrates are covered in the hydrogeological.
that's very strong.
Yep, yeah, we completed that and included that with the latest submission.
Werner,
It's an
has
interesting idea.
Acorn looked at the answers, going back and forth on the answers?
Well, so that was the next question, that I had for the board, was whether or not they wanted a re-review, if they wanted Acorn to go back over.
Raise the issue, check it with Warren.
I would think
The
they certainly have
submissions.
to go over the answers that these guys did.
Yeah, that's fine.
So,
Yeah, no, we can resubmit that.
Yeah, if you could resubmit that to Acorn, that would be good.
Tom, can I add something to this discussion? I'll apologize for not studying the HOA document. I do have a care about it, and I was interested to hear what you were saying. There's a group in town, the Conservation Committee, I believe it's called, that's done extensive work on basically putting an ordinance in place that would look at what restrictions made sense to put in place, and they've done a lot of work soliciting input from the public and worked with some other communities that are maybe a little further along. What would the board think, and Werner, what would your office think about us taking this HOA document and the sections that Nina was just discussing and asking them for a review?
I think you set a bad precedent by doing something like that.
Bad in what way?
Bad in that, so you have an applicant that has come before you at the final stage, that's done a significant amount of work. You have a potential draft ordinance that hasn't been put forward or vetted by staff, town attorney, or anyone else for that matter. There has been discussion for sure, and I would expect at some point, that we'll be presented with that. But at this time, I think that that's premature, certainly premature to be putting that forward on an application that's well underway.
I raise it because I think this board, over the course of the past several years has become increasingly aware of and informed about the problems that pesticides and herbicides and bird strikes for that matter, have in our community. And I think we're about to be making some hard decisions about this particular HOA document. And I wanted to at least get the benefit of the input from people who have been studying the issue. Not that it would have force of law, but that it would have, it would inform our own discussion. If you think we should do that without that information, then I guess we'll have to consider that input.
I just think it's a bad precedent to set for all the reasons that I stated, to do that, particularly at this, at this stage in the game.
I think it's a bad precedent to do with a particular application. I think maybe it would be a good idea sometime for the planning board to get together with that committee and get some input on what they're doing and their proposed ordinance and why they put it together the way
Right.
they have.
Yeah.
I think some of us
that's fine.
have done that. I know you have and I have, and we've done that.
If you want to workshop with them at some point, that may be something that you want to
No,
consider.
I'm really only asking about a review of this particular
Yeah.
HOA document that just received some criticism here tonight. So I'm fine. I just wanted to ask the question and put it out to the board.
Well, I believe this is the first time we've seen the full HOA document,
Yeah.
sort of. Don't believe you gave anything near as good as detailed as this in the
In the
preliminary.
preliminary.
I will also point out that you have very little in terms of performance standards within your subregs or in the town ordinance that even dictates what should or shouldn't be in an HOA document to begin with.
Right.
So,
So maybe that gives us discretion. I
Well,
understand.
I think if you look at the land use ordinance in general and look at 1010A and 1010, 1010A and 1010B, you get the gist of what the town is looking for to protect basically wildlife and scenic views and basically the character of the town. And you can apply that even if you don't have that specific written out guideline in the subdivision regs, because you're going to have houses built and you're going to have yards and people in them and, planning for things like that ahead of time. I think it's important to think ahead as to how that can be applied to subdivisions as well as to specific instances of individual properties. So,
yeah, I don't disagree with that. I just think that, whenever you're starting to get into the, in the direct minutia and performance it's one thing to look at, an ordinance and say that, and be directed by intent.
Right.
It's another thing to start to develop very detailed performance criteria without any, without any particular type of guidance documents.
Couldn't agree more. I just think we're talking about taking something that does go into detail now, and we'll go into a little more detail when we see the next revision. And we are going to make a decision as a board as to whether it meets the intent of the performance standards, knowing that there's another group that has given that same set of ordinances some thought and solicited some input and done some careful thinking about it. We could reach out to them.
it's probably
If you
time.
think the precedent should be set that the planning board does that independently, then I think that's fine too. Or not should be set, should be maintained, that we do that independently.
Well, if the proposed ordinance of the Conservation Committee goes through, then it will definitely set a precedent for the planning board, because we would have to abide by that ordinance. And it's possible that there would be some changes to the land use ordinance and to the subdivision regs along those lines.
And as that process goes forward, what they're proposing can change too.
Oh, I
Before it
think,
becomes-
I think it will.
Yeah,
It will
so
change.
it's-
They're not done with it, so
Yeah,
I don't think we're in a position to adopt
Right.
their
So if we're not
unapproved.
adopting it,
No.
I worry about a slippery slope here of what we're trying to achieve, you know, because it's something that's in process that we're trying to apply to something. And if it hasn't been completely vetted in that, it's one to have it like you were talking before about providing information to us.
Right.
Which is a good thing to increase our knowledge and understanding of the issues, then for us to apply that knowledge that we've gained versus taking somebody else's document that's not mature yet and trying to apply that.
Please, I made no mention of a document. I only talked about soliciting the opinion of the individuals who have worked this issue. The fact that there is a document that hasn't been approved because they don't necessarily have consensus on it
Right.
is related, but a separate issue.
I perhaps we should repeat the, do another workshop with them. Sounds like we might be, I hope they might be further along than when we last talked to them. And,
Well, it's not just fertilizers and pesticides along the way, it's the bird strikes as well, and I think it's time that the town addressed it and started to think about whether we need more specifics in the land use ordinance and the subdivision regs.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something we need to bring before the Board of Selectmen, start thinking about.
But I'm hearing that the consensus of the board is to keep that separate from this application.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
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 Thanks all.
May I just add a comment relative to the, what's before you? And as someone who brings applications and helps applicants develop HOA documents and drafts plans, it's difficult for folks on our side of the table to put things in place that aren't specific in an ordinance. Like, for instance, if the town wishes to enact some standards on pesticide application or herbicide application or fertilizer application, and that's not in the ordinance, it's, at least from my perspective, something that's tough for a lot of applicants to accept. In my experience, applicants are willing to do whatever's in the ordinance and really nothing more. So it sounds like the solution here, and I know my advice isn't worth much, but if the town wishes to go this way, it would be nice, from my perspective, if that was explicitly in the ordinance. That way we can all agree on what all these developments are going to be subjected to, rather than some condition of approval on every subdivision that comes through, or some subdivisions but not others, and how do you decide?
It would be easier, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So that's just my 2 cents.
Okay.
Okay.
So, before we move on, so, Werner, can I recap what I think I heard you say about the 4 or 5 things that you also needs to be included? So the first one was the DOT entrance permit,
Correct, yep.
then electric details,
Just change of utility.
Yeah, the utility identified on the cover page.
utility, and then you wanted to show the separation between the wells and the septic system
For the abutting properties.
for abutting properties. And then there's a no-cut buffer along Route 9 of 50 feet, right? That's just
Correct.
for information.
Yep.
And then we're gonna have Acorn review, or we're gonna ask that Acorn review the answers to their, that
Correct.
have been provided to their questions, right? Those 5 things?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And you probably need a letter from the Historic Preservation Society.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll check.
Yeah.
I'll check.
Okay.
Well, is that from the local
No.
Historical Preservation Society or from the state?
No, that would be the
State.
state.
Yeah, it would be
That's
from
the
the
state one.
yeah.
Okay, good.
I will check.
And then you'll finalize the permits outstanding with DEP in
Yes.
the Corps.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
Those would not be subject to us approving them.
yeah. But
Those would be conditions.
Conditions.
You can't do
Conditions,
anything until you get
yeah.
this stuff,
Yeah.
but it doesn't stop us from approving the plan.
Yeah, but they can't move
They
forward.
can't move forward
before
until they get all the,
DEP.
you know, that would be
Yeah.
one of the
Unless,
conditions at the end of the finding of facts.
Yeah,
yeah, unless for whatever reason, if something were to come back from the Corps or DEP that would constitute a change to the plan.
right. Right,
Which
that
I don't think it
they
would-
had they changed something significant to get the permit, which would have
right.
changed
Yep.
the submission, yeah, that makes sense,
Yeah, that would be a risk
yeah.
Yep.
on us.
Yeah.
Got
And then also just to remind the board in terms of process, that once we get through planning board, the town, whenever we review the costs of the subdivision, we do that based off of estimates, actual estimates for the review of the financial capacity piece. So we have the general financial capacity letter that's in here, but we'll review that based on, whatever the site contractor provides for actual cost estimates for the infrastructure. And then whatever letter of
I
credit,
thought that was in there already.
I think we still have estimates, engineering estimates for that.
Just as an aside, you really think it's only gonna take 55,000 to blast out for blasting for the road?
Hell, I spent that for my one lot
Yeah, well,
10 years ago, 15 years ago. So,
yeah, well, which is why we'll refine those numbers,
Yeah.
when, I mean, one of the problems is we really don't know how much ledge there is. It's very difficult to
Yeah.
know that, without
Yeah, it kind of
getting
appears.
into it.
It just seemed kinda low.
Understood.
All right,
Okay, I'm done.
okay, so I guess the list of things that Larry just made is,
I have it written down.
you have it, and you're gonna do something to the HOA.
HOA as well,
To-
yep.
So beyond that, I guess it's pretty complete, I don't know.
We're gonna make a motion, it's complete pending,
pending those items.
those items
Yeah.
completed as well.
And that would lead to scheduling a public meeting at that, public hearing at the next
Right,
meeting.
it's complete, and we're expecting this stuff.
That information,
Would come.
we wouldn't want to close the public hearing before that information was
Right.
made available,
Yeah,
that's all.
so-
We could open it.
Just,
I'll make a motion that the application is complete,
I'll second.
except for the items that are
Items that we listed,
conditional that
yeah.
we expect to be completed
Yeah.
at the next meeting or thereafter.
In a second, I'm not real,
Second.
Okay, so,
I agree.
I'm here, but I'm
Agreed.
not here.
I agree.
Great. Agree.
Okay, that's five in favor, so it is complete.
Thank you.
And so that means we would be scheduling a public hearing on it for the next meeting, which would be in June.
Yeah.
So first Wednesday in June, whatever that is, and we'll see you then.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Which brings us to item number 2, which is item 230404, 803 Kings Highway, John Gallant and Michael Bedell. And it's a expansion of a single-family house, non-compliant.
So I'm Mike Bedell from Kennebunkport Architects, and we are seeking the board's approval to do a minor expansion of an existing non-conforming home at 803 Kings Highway. And what we're looking to do is keep the house in the same location as it currently is, but we're gonna raise the house up, get the mechanicals into a proper mechanical room, put it on piers, and so on. We've kept the footprint the same, and we've just increased the volume. So basically, all we've done is rearranged the floor plan and the roof lines and met the DEP's requirements for this zone.
So you're literally raising the house, redoing the foundation and footings, setting it down to slightly higher?
Yes, so what we've done is we've worked back and forth with Warner and the DEP, and we're gonna take out the existing basement, which has the sump pump, mechanicals, oil tanks. We're gonna pick the house up to meet the new DEP requirements. Put it down on a pier foundation, put the mechanicals on the first floor in the mechanical room.
Yeah.
And we're gonna keep as much as possible of the existing floor plan as it's non-conforming.
But then you're going to build it upward to add more time, more space to it?
We're gonna, yes, so at the end of the day, the footprint will end up being the same footprint size, but we've increased the interior square footage,
And volume?
By how much?
only by a couple hundred square feet. So we went from 1,736
15%
to 1,992.
and 30% on volume.
And this house has not been remodeled before?
It has not.
Okay.
What would the total height be?
It's around 32 feet.
Are you adding additional windows to the top there?
Yes, so there will be additional windows added to the home from what currently exists.
And they'll be like double hung, screened?
They're gonna be mostly double hung. They will be screened. There are a couple picture windows as well, smaller picture windows.
Will they be facing towards the water?
They will be facing towards the water.
Okay, well, I'm gonna raise the same question I always raise.
With the bird proofing.
Birds,
Yep.
yeah.
So we can make sure that we tell the applicant that the screens have to remain on all the double hung windows, and also look into, bird-proof glass on the few windows that,
You can do bird-proof glass. You can also do, you might find it less expensive. Some people have done overhangs
okay,
to cut the reflection,
To cut
because
down on
that's
glare.
what birds fly into. And also at night, keep the lights off there so they don't fly into the windows thinking it's a clear area.
okay. We can definitely recommend that and put that into our window schedule and design.
Yes, I would look at Audubon, many sites now, Portland is going through it right now, have lots of design ideas and guidelines for protecting birds from flying into windows. One of the biggest problems is when migrating birds come in at night, especially around shoreland zoning, you get them flying into windows that are lit. It's a real problem. Oh. I'd like to know what the cost of bird-proof glass is today. I don't know if the cost has been coming down or going up.
Right.
But they have a lot of different types,
Nothing's
so
coming.
not so much residential, but
Yeah, I know it's very common on commercial construction, but we will definitely look into it for this as well.
I would.
How many windows do you have that are new added?
That are new added, I would have to go through and count up all of them, but it's gonna be a significant number
Okay.
of new
But
windows.
most, you said most are going to be double hung, though.
Yes, yes, the
Screens, the
vast
screens on the
majority.
outside.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay. All right, so,
Okay. Oh, you do not have in your application, I believe, the deed, and we will need a copy of the deed.
Oh, okay, yes, I do have that.
Yeah.
I can send that along.
okay, so get it to April, and she'll get it to us.
What's that?
Get it to April, and she'll get it
Yes.
to us. Anyone else have comments?
I have one, just to, so the board, there's always the question of why, the application is here. Because it's not it's not a removal, this isn't a complete reconstruction of the house. As Michelle outlined in her memo, this is comes before you because of the new foundation of a non-conforming, and there's this, intent to review it based on relocation to a greatest practical extent. That's the primary purpose as to why it's here. I will just note one thing on your plan, Mike. I just saw that you have a 35-foot build height identified here, and for Kennebunkport in a Goose Rock zone, it's a 30-foot
It's 30, okay.
height limit. So we'll just need to
Just,
get that verified
Yep.
so that we don't go over
We
the
don't go
30.
over.
Yeah, we don't go over the 30-foot.
It's 30 feet? in
30
Goose-
feet for Goose Rocks.
I didn't realize that.
Yep.
Okay.
even in a frontal dune?
We don't distinguish.
Okay.
Yep.
It helps when you're putting in an application. I don't see it here. If you sort of put in an overlay of, or at least show a design of what the old building looks like compared to the new building, it helps us to determine where the extra volume is, because I think parts of that are in the non-conforming area.
Yes.
But the other thing I want to bring up and ask Werner about is not on this application, because I haven't looked it up, so I don't know whether it fits or not. But when I look at the vision card, I see a square footage that's different from what's on the application. The next application is where I'm looking at that, but I just want to bring it up here just briefly.
Well, let me pull it up and take a look.
Was that the square footage of coverage and that? Because I noticed there was one different that had like the shower and something else added to it, I thought. And it had the 17, and then it had a couple of things that were added, I thought, and that's why.
On this application?
I thought it was.
This is a bulkhead and a shower, yeah.
Yeah, there were added, yeah.
I forgot to look up on this
Yeah.
one, but I did look up on the next one, and I got a little confused on the actual square footage. We're still within parameters, I think, for
Yeah.
the expansion. It's just,
Yeah, so square footage was only 15%.
right, it's still, well within.
But I
Even
remember
if
it
it were
was, there were
increased.
two different numbers that caused me to go back and look, and like I said, it was the bulkhead and the shower that caused the difference,
Yep.
that are on one and not the other.
The showers will get you.
Yeah, so without doing the math on it, numbers appear to be consistent. One of the things that, we would be adding up was we'd be adding the first floor number, but then we'd be adding the open porch finished, the porch screen finished. And just roughly looking at those, in terms of footprint, there's 12, 13, so around 1,400 square feet in terms of what you'd consider footprint. Yeah,
For this
that's
application?
correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
yep.
so, let me look back. What it says, is that exactly what it says here?
On there, it says 1407 for
1407.
their existing and proposed on the,
Okay,
That's the footprint, yeah.
okay.
A kind of a minor point, I didn't get the package in the mail. I only got the digital one, so I just need to, wherever the list is with my name on it, or not my name on it,
Okay.
to get my name on it. Not that I need to have more paper, but
no, that's a fair point. So it likely depended on when Mike picked up the actual
Yeah,
application.
You can have my copy if you'd like.
no, I'm good.
Yep.
I looked at it online. Sometimes it's easier here to have pieces of paper to move around.
Sheila Matthews was on there.
Okay,
I just had one question. Could you just be clear about what it is what are the non-conformances today?
So-
Explicitly, is it which setbacks or,
So in this house, the
Yeah.
nonconformities are the side setbacks on both sides.
and,
So as you look at the site plan, it's non-conforming on both sides.
and what is, how non-conforming are they?
It's fairly significant, as you can see, right here. It goes basically, oops, sorry. It goes basically down, say, almost halfway into the building on one side. So as you can see on that line,
So
that's
the
your
side
setback.
Setback is, the requirement is
15.
15?
Feet.
And you're saying it's really,
and a half.
in actuality, only 7.5? Did I understand that?
Probably,
On
probably more
both.
like 3.
Or
Yeah.
3,
Yeah.
on both sides?
Two and some change.
And are there any nonconformances in the front?
No,
Set-
so
setback
from
from the
the
water?
road or for the high water, we're conforming on both sides.
Thank you. And just to close that back, that's why it's in front of us.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. And you're not changing that?
It's
Not
really,
making it
really
worse.
not much we can do with it. It's such a non-conforming lot. Such a skinny building one, envelope to kind of deal with.
But the lot size is smaller than normal too, isn't it?
The lot side is non-conforming?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Yeah, that's another
Not sure you
non-conformity.
could park a car in there.
Okay,
That's all I
so,
had, yeah.
anyone else?
Well, I had a couple of comments. So we mentioned the deed, but was there an authorization letter as well?
Yes.
We got that.
Okay, all right. So then, I had a very detailed comment on page A1, your details. So in general, could you add the rebar sizes to this?
Sure.
And I presume they're gonna be number 4 and number 5 usually.
Number 4s and 5s, correct.
But on your stepped footing detail, you're showing rebar in one direction, but I think you're gonna need rebar through the, horizontal as well
Yes.
in the plane. And anyway, if you could just take a look at this also in the upper portion here, that lower rebar needs to come up to just below the top of the concrete for bonding purposes.
And we're actually probably not gonna have that step detail anyway on this, because
Okay,
the site's
all right.
relatively flat.
Okay,
But I will double check all the details.
that'd be good, because there's some
Yeah.
standard details that'll suit this. But anyway, if you could just show the size of the rebars, I think that'd be great.
Absolutely.
All right, that's it.
Okay. So, could I get a motion on this one
Motion to approve.
to complete?
Complete, sorry, it's complete, yes,
Except for a deed.
except for the deed, yeah.
Except for the deed.
Okay.
But, okay,
I'll second that.
all right, so,
I agree.
I agree.
agree?
Agreed.
Okay, so, first Wednesday in June, we'll see you then
Sounds good.
for a public hearing. And when, we need you to supply the things you didn't prior.
I'll send them right along.
Okay,
Okay.
cool.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Which brings us to our third item,
Yeah.
which is item 230405, 21 Norwood Lane.
Yeah.
Mark and Catherine Battersher and John Eisenstyler.
Hi, I'm John Eiseler, representative auditors on 21 Norwood Lane, and they are here for the similar reason to the previous applicant. They want to put a new foundation under their existing house, and which then triggers you to review where to put the house technically. The other portion is they want to move the barn that is currently pretty much close to the resource and move it further away from the resource and keep it attached to the house.
Okay, my first problem was looking at the picture you sent. I didn't see the barn, so,
Oh, well,
I-
it's a garage barn. This is the barn structure. Now, how it shows up on yours.
well, I was just, this is a picture, aerial
Yeah.
that
It's,
was included.
it's right here.
Okay,
That's
all right.
the darker
Thank you.
section.
So, sorry to interrupt, proceed.
Nope,
proceed with your descriptions.
Well, so, and basically want to move the barn about 20 feet further from the resource, up in front of the house, and basically put the foundation underneath it. The other request would be to bring in some fill to further, to help isolate the house from the waters that came up in the last big storm in December.
Are you actually allowed to put fill in there? Is there a state guideline on that?
No, so, you can do fill. I mean, they do have to, they have to get permission from DEP, just in terms of that level of, that level of fill. As a general rule, it's always my understanding that they, if you were doing it outside of a project, if you were doing maintenance, there were some minimal, kind of maintenance fill amounts that were allowed. But as long as it's addressed in any of the DEP permits, that's something that can be done. We're more interested, if there's any significant amounts that are, from a floodplain perspective, I should say, we're interested to make sure that it's not fill that's being used for structural purposes. So in other words, you're not providing fill beneath the building for footing support purposes like that, which I don't believe, that's not something that's proposed here.
So it's like a breakwater.
Well, I think, FEMA, discusses, what they call the use of structural fill. So, with the the general understanding that, fill brought in and placed underneath, underneath the building for structural purposes doesn't have necessarily have the same capacities, as, original grade, original soil. So, not unless you follow that up with an engineering analysis.
But what exactly would the fill be? Would it be soil? Would it be gravel? Would it be,
It'd be soil.
Yeah, it's my understanding this is more of a final grade.
This is final
This is a
grading.
final grade question.
are you going to plant it to help keep it there?
Oh, yeah.
For storms and
Yeah.
stuff?
So more like landscaping.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
And by putting this fill in, I'm not diverting or making a problem for an abutter or someone else.
Or runoff.
Because that's the other issue, isn't it? That,
Correct. Yeah.
I've denied space to something, it's gonna go somewhere. And as long as I'm not having runoff or forcing it into somebody else's.
Yeah, I mean, in the state of Maine, that level of grading actually is a civil issue. If you are purposefully directing drainage onto an abutting property, it's considered a civil issue. We certainly advise, builders and developers to, be cognizant of that whenever they're doing final grades on projects and rough grades, so that they, don't run afoul, of that section of statute.
My concern would be the next big heavy storm would take it right out into the ocean.
Well, that's one question I have.
Yep.
This Norwood Lane runs, what's just beyond Norwood Lane on that side is a river,
Correct.
and on the other side is more housing.
There's a marsh.
It's
There's a marsh in
marsh.
It's
between.
a-
Marsh,
There's a marsh
It's
between
marsh.
this and
Estuary.
that.
Yeah, there's
it's
two,
estuary.
Yeah.
So this is
you get-
estuary here
Yeah.
before whatever that house is.
You get hit with a setback on both sides.
it's both sides. That's where the,
Yeah.
so so basically, we're moving the barn up
Yep.
so it meets the one setback, and here's the other setback. It comes from both directions. It's
Yeah.
kind of- it's the only safe place is there. Well, no, it isn't anywhere, actually. It gets you from both sides.
Yes, okay.
So you're always in the setback on that lot.
So the plans you're showing are after it's been done, nothing before.
Correct. I brought photos. I do have existing elevations, but. In the event you didn't want the barn to be moved or moved someplace else, I didn't want to go too far along with the plans and then have to change them.
Could you perhaps, maybe you did, but could you talk about the improvement that will be achieved in the nonconformance by moving the barn as you've proposed?
The barn will be 20 feet more conforming from the,
How far is it from the marsh now?
I think it's on the survey. Well, it's 21 feet to the lot line, so it's about 22 feet.
And you're moving it how much?
Another 19.
Okay. So it's
Right.
from like 20 to like 40.
But you move away there, but you actually, are you increasing your setback from the side?
Correct.
So you're moving away from the marsh, but you're actually gaining some on the side one.
Yep, we're gaining 2 more feet.
Yeah, so is that a volume?
Can you say gaining? I'm not sure whether it's
I'm
getting
moving-
more nonconforming or less nonconforming.
Getting more non-conforming is
More
what I want,
non-conforming
yeah.
on the
That's
sideline.
That's the correct term, yeah.
More non-conforming on the sideline. It currently encroaches about 2 feet, and it will encroach 4 feet on the
So
sideline.
you're trading off-
At the greatest point, because it's always tailing off.
And again, I think it's important that we quantify what are the nonconformances and how are we changing them? That's why we're pushing on this.
Yep, no.
You're saying, if I can paraphrase again, that you want to move it, and to move it where you want to, you're going to decrease the nonconformance setback from the wetland,
Yes,
and you're going to increase the nonconformance by a corresponding amount?
2 feet.
Oh, by a
So
minuscule
it's,
amount
so it's here.
from the lot line.
Right, right now it's here, is non-conforming and comes back and is still non-conforming there. And now it's gonna be more here,
Non-conforming in what way? Are we
in the
one-
sideline.
So,
Just
side
from the
step.
property line, not from water?
Correct.
Okay.
Do you do this in volume? Because that's what because I have one volume, because it's at an angle and everything, so,
Well, I'm inclined so I think we can do it in volume, but I'm predisposed to worry more about
absolutely.
the wetland proximity than I am about a 2-foot change in the lot line. That, without getting down to the numbers, that sounded like a fair deal to
Good,
me.
a good swap,
Yeah,
yeah.
so,
right,
just my 2 cents.
Agreed.
we'd have to know how the neighbors feel on that too, of course.
Well, is it close?
It's the applicant's mother.
Ooh, that could be,
Oh, that might be a problem then.
Oh, boy.
So they're likely to be predisposed to this. Yeah, okay.
You gave her a Mother's Day gift, right?
Yeah, this is it.
prime of the pump.
We're giving you a barn.
And also versus doing nothing,
Yeah.
just leaving it as it is.
I think that this is preferable to leaving it as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
with
you're
the
actually-
possible discussion of the fill issue, but I think that's,
Well,
Is-
that's why it's nice to have an overlay of what's there versus where it's going to go,
Well,
of what you have at present versus where it's going.
well, this is all existing and staying, and then this is the part that's there and coming here.
Okay.
Okay,
My glasses aren't there.
so that's just gonna move there. There's not
Correct.
something right next to it.
No.
Okay.
Give me an idea.
So right now, it's all connected, by porches, and
Okay.
so
Again,
so this is just gonna come forward.
I have a problem with the the square footage, because your vision statement says the floor area is 2,526 square feet. And you say that it's basically 1,649 square feet.
Well,
I'm
that's
I'm
not,
not sure what I'm reading on these vision statements and how you get to,
well, I think the vision statement is the total square footage of the house, but the application calls for the existing footprint, not the actual square footage. They're two different things.
yeah, I see this is the footprint, but there's your interior square footage.
Yep,
And here it says, yeah, and here it says floor area, which would be your square footage, 2,529. So that's, and you'd still be within it with the changes you're making. There's no problem there. I'm just wondering where our starting point is, how you get to it.
So if you're looking at a vision card,
Uh-huh.
you know, so what you would add up for your footprint. So some of the common codes, you know, that are used here. So BAS is a first floor code, you know, so that's 822 square feet.
The garage is part, the open porch is part,
Correct, so you'd have your
the wood
820
deck is part of it.
822, 252, and the wood deck.
What about the three-quarter story?
So that's not footprint.
That's not footprint.
That's
That's
fine.
not the floor area?
Three-quarter story is gonna be the second floor.
Yeah, but then you've got, I see the footprint, but you've got interior square footage at 2108.
Yep.
Okay, so you'd be taking off the deck there and the porch?
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
all right. Now I'm getting to understand.
Yeah, and also keep in mind too, so the vision, you know, the vision codes, you know, so they'll give
big
you
ones out.
a better sense for the footprint, but I wouldn't be using the vision codes to necessarily try to calc out, you know, a living space, volume to this level, or even the square footage, because it's gonna assign, just a general parameter to it, you know, so if
All right.
in assessing it's been assigned as a three-quarter story, you know, the system has, you know, an automated reduction in terms of number that's gonna apply to it, so, you know, it may give you that 1,050 as kind of the footprint of the three-quarter story. But then you see the effective area gets knocked down to 788 square feet. That's just built into the code, you know, for
Right.
assessing purposes. Now,
So
if you
ignore the
actually-
vision statement when I'm looking at these.
Yeah, I just, you know, it's good to get a general idea with it, but, you know, I always tell folks, you know, this data is for assessing purposes, gives you a good general idea, but,
Okay,
you know, I wouldn't hold it to the square foot. Keep in mind too, these numbers all round to the square foot, and so there's always gonna be a certain margin of error.
okay. All right.
And and also when folks, you know, do their calcs for, lot coverage, you know, same thing, these don't account for overhangs or, you know, or anything
Right.
of that nature either.
So no overhangs in the vision statement?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, so next question is the same as I asked the other about new windows and doors and bird strikes and overhangs and,
well, they're gonna be, it's, double hung windows, so it could keep the screens on them. I mean, that's,
screens need to be on the outside,
and, yeah, there'll be double hung windows.
And they need to stay there year-round.
yeah. And patio doors, like you have there, are those new?
Yes, there will
They
be.
should have screens as well on the
Yeah.
outside. So, again, you're between the ocean and
Yep.
and an estuary, which is a big bird population. And lastly, would you explain exactly where the easement is you talk about?
Well, that was, you know, the application asks for where there's an easement and there's some sort of, you know, a power line easement coming across at the very rear.
Okay. So that's not gonna affect anything,
No, no.
no. But I also noted that there's oh, it's on the large map. Large map. Okay. You've got two different flood zone boundaries on there.
Yes.
One from flood insurance rate map, and then one from, oh, they're both from flood insurance rate map. How do you get two of them?
They come from the two different directions. They're two different,
Astoria and the marsh.
marsh. That's the crazy,
When you say estuary, you really mean river?
No.
No,
Estuaries on the
estuary.
other side.
The marsh is part of the estuary, isn't it?
Two different.
The marsh is the estuary. It's a
What-
saltwater estuary.
That's my point. I'm not understanding
They should be.
the language here.
One might flood at a particular rate, and the other one might flood at a different.
One side of the house, you're saying, yeah,
Yeah.
and the other, okay.
two different directions.
Yeah, all right.
Okay,
Don't go to Vegas.
I was wondering why they
It's,
were
so
here.
it's not like an island where the water raises the same on
Right,
all sides.
yeah. Marsh is gonna go up the side.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have.
From the map perspective, think of it as, the center of that, that area is at least identified on the current flood insurance rate map as a C zone. And the closer you get to the water, you increase the intensity of the flood map. So it goes from a C to a B to the A2. So the A2 is the 100-year, the 1% annual chance. The B is actually the 500-year. And then the C is the non-flood, minimal risk. Now, again, keep in mind, that's solely based on the graphics of the maps from 1983, which, and John can attest to this, it's very difficult to try to take that product and superimpose it on a plan, because these aren't, those lines, they're not geo-referenced in any way, shape, or form, they're, it's, part of the reason why, I'm not saying in this case here, but homes have been historically misclassified in terms of their location in
the old
flood zones
technology.
based on risk.
Old technology.
That's right. So, ultimately, we're headed to, the United States has been headed towards digital firm maps, D-firms, as opposed to just firms, which utilize, your LiDAR data which highlight your contours a lot better than, these old maps, they used 10-foot contour intervals of the USGS, the old USGS maps, so.
So for the matter before this board, which essentially is rebuilding in place and moving the barn, is there a thought that the digital data, the very accurate data, if we had it, would cast a different light on the fact that right now it looks like you're going to be moving the barn away from the highest flood line and improving the situation? It seems like, the accuracy of this data, I'm having a hard time seeing that it affects the decision we're trying to make.
Well, I think you're seeing that on the application, so, John shows an existing first floor elevation at 11.6, and then, you've got a proposed elevation at 15.2, so, I think it's, whether or not, the lines on the map to some degree are arbitrary, their personal experience and where Mother Nature chooses to flood.
Well, I'm making it, I may be doing this incorrectly, but I had it my thought was that as the sea level rises, as where that high water mark for the wetland is measured from, are we talking about where it's measured from today, or are we talking about where it's measured from on a map from 1983?
No. So 1983 flood insurance rate maps have nothing to do with setbacks, it's.
That's my mistake then.
Yeah, it's not,
Okay.
it's, that's a mapping product used for insurance purposes. But we often see it on plans because our zoning also takes that 100-year coastal floodplain and assigns a resource protection designation to it.
Okay.
Which is what gets me here. If
Well, you're here because of the, just exactly the same thing that we just dealt with on the previous application, is that we've got a new foundation under a non-conforming structure, which you can see from their application. They've got 75 feet coming at them from both directions. And we have a portion here that's being relocated to a greater practical extent, the barn, moving, as we've done before in the past, where we've had homes that, don't meet any setback, and we've directed applicants to, if we have to pick one to make better, we've generally chosen the environmental hazard setback to make better, and we've honored that to a greater practical extent than the property line setbacks.
Understood.
19 and 2.
Yeah, kind of regardless of where the line is, this ultimately is gonna be better off by being farther from the marsh. Yeah, no matter if we.
Seems that way.
Yeah, no matter if we, it's 2 more foot this way or 3 more foot this way, we're moving it farther away from the hazard, so that's gotta be a
Right,
good
and
thing.
closer to the neighbor's property and,
Yeah,
Mom.
well, we hear about that in the public if there's an issue there.
Yeah.
understood. Okay.
Okay, so I think we have enough information here, is any?
I had a minor comment.
Sure,
It's really
please.
stupid, but I'm pretty slow. I got confused because I was reading the application, it talked about the barn, but the plan talks about the garage.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and
they wanted,
It threw me for a little bit, but
They're the same thing, right?
I live in Maine, we can figure out which is which.
yeah, well, no, it's
It's okay.
it's a barn and.
It did confuse
And
me.
a
but
garage,
As I said, I'm the
but-
slowest member of the group.
So it's gonna be part of the living space?
But it's
is what
turning
you're
into part of the
proposing.
living space. It originally was gonna be a garage, and much to my client's disappointment, they decided not to have a garage for his car.
Exciting.
Okay, so can I have a motion on the completeness of this?
Move that it's complete.
Do we need to put a condition in there that he gets a DEP approval for
Yeah.
fill, or is that
No,
something that
That's something that would be in the conditions of.
conditions of
Yeah, I mean,
approval?
I'm fine with that being as a condition, prior to building permit.
That's part of building permit.
Yep.
That he has that,
Okay.
okay,
I'll second that.
all right, so, Ed,
I agree.
Approve.
approve,
Agree.
Approved.
okay. So, that finishes the 3 main items. We have some other things to do, and somehow your chairman forgot to assign case managers for the last 2, and I assuming Mike is still the case manager.
I'm
For item
still-
1.
Yeah, I'm still it.
So,
I've been removed.
So item 2 was the Gallant and Bedell house. So is a volunteer for that one?
Okay.
Okay,
Number 2.
so Larry has said number 2. And number 3. Don't all jump at once. Ed, you want number 3?
I'll take that.
Okay.
So for the applicant, though, this ends number
We
3.
see for all 3 from today, we see 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks from today, whatever the first
First.
First
The-
Wednesday.
First
Wednesday,
Wednesday
okay.
in
Okay,
In
that's what I
June.
want to know.
First
Well, thank you very
public
much.
For public hearing, right?
Yeah,
For public hearing, yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay,
That'll be June 7th.
June 7th,
June 7th.
okay.
All right.
I thought it was probably 3 weeks from now. Anyway, I was like five Wednesday months. Okay,
Right.
so we are other business, which is there are two items for which we were supposed to hold public hearing on. These changes are going to be in the June
Correct, yes.
ballot.
Yeah, so this is a little bit different than how we've done it before. But as you all know, we would typically, or I should say, we have in the past held a joint public hearing with the Board of Selectmen on the
Yeah.
warrant articles. So these are the same ones that we've discussed before.
Yep,
And tonight, as opposed to having you all at the last Board of Selectmen's meeting, we just chose, to do the public hearing, planning board public hearing portion during one of your regular meetings
okay,
to meet that requirement.
very good. So, do we happen to have any public on Zoom?
We do, we have 2 people attending.
Oh, good. Well, thank you, you two people out there. This is for you. So the first item is our Article 6 townwide regulations. It amounts to changing or making some clarifications on design of hammerhead and cul-de-sac turnarounds, as well as discussing fire chief's equipment access for when the planning board is discussing road standards. So we've already discussed that for the board, that first one on the board already once, and it's important that we have cul-de-sacs that the fire chief can pull around. I know, I'm quite certain my cul-de-sac is
It's
in
not gonna
trouble
get
that
into
way.
mine with that big truck.
But anyway, so that's what this one does, and
So it's basically an update for the new fire truck.
it's an update, yeah,
You got it.
There
an
we go.
update for the new fire truck. And changes to the land use ordinance, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay,
And what I would, just put in the mind of the board is that, and, I think it's fine to wait until after the town, we've gotten through the warrant article, so provided that the town passes this particular revision, then I would suggest that you likewise
Update
update
the
the subdivision regs as
Sure.
well.
yep. Good idea. All right, so that's what this one is about. And if anyone from the public would like to discuss it, they should raise their hand, I guess.
We're having problems with Zoom, so that probably won't work.
Okay, well, hard to have a public hearing with no public, but,
Well, can they hear?
No,
Oh,
right now Zoom
that is a
crapped
good
out
issue.
on this laptop
Oh, God.
okay,
about 3 minutes ago.
Why don't we just postpone this?
so.
I will
yeah,
tell you that we've already had a public hearing on this at the Board of Selectmen level.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Okay.
all right,
Can
so
we forego it?
and
No.
people can watch this if they really want to, I guess. So why don't we discuss the other
If we
one?
could forego it, we probably wouldn't do it. So.
Okay, the other one was accessory apartments.
Oh, yeah.
And we also already discussed that in the meeting, so do we have to, it's the same one we discussed the last time?
That's right. Yeah, nothing has changed.
So we've already discussed it in the planning board meeting?
That's right. Yes.
So there-
This is just an officially posted public hearing.
Okay.
And you think
And
we can claim
and
credit?
So
we
I'm
can
opening
claim
the
credit
public
for it,
hearing
yeah.
for this one.
Well, there's no one here.
Hey, that means I can close the public hearing fairly quickly. But, the selectmen, we already discussed this at the planning board once. And furthermore, the selectmen have had their public hearing, and for some reason didn't invite us.
So we can maybe say that the planning board defers to the select board,
Perfect.
There you go.
public meeting. But I don't, I think it's ludicrous for us to say we're having a public meeting.
Yeah.
No, you're just required to hold it, which is exactly what you're doing, and so
And
this
no
is-
one showed up.
That's true.
Or-
We noticed it as a mixed, is that what the word we use? A
Hybrid.
hybrid meeting, and it's not.
Well, there are people, potentially people watching it on
No,
channel whatever.
Yes, they
Oh.
can watch on TV and they can watch on streaming. They just can't interact with Zoom right now.
We,
okay.
we also, yeah.
Well, anyway,
So
So let-
I think as long as the minutes reflect that we held a public meeting, no members attended,
we held a public hearing
and.
and there was no public input.
Right.
And the
Oh,
story.
well, and that it was available for streaming, but not via Zoom.
Well, yeah,
I'd just like to be above board,
Yeah.
transparent, if you will.
Good.
And Tricia, if it should,
If it's a public hearing and you don't give the public an opportunity to comment,
Or public hearing.
is it really a public hearing?
I knew that was coming.
So I can tell you that these particular items have been on the Board of Selectmen's agenda for at least 4 times, where those have been publicly.
I understand that, and I understand there probably won't be any comment. But if we're supposed to hold a public hearing and technical difficulties are making it impossible for the 2 people out there, if they want to comment, is it really a public hearing? Are we allowing for comment? Do we want to postpone it?
Dave,
that was mine.
can we check to see if the one member is?
Fresh.
Can hear us?
I have Zoom back on the air and I was trying to check for audio right now.
Okay,
good.
there we go.
If I'm on Zoom, I'm gone at this point. I mean, I think this is.
Yeah, but some
Yes.
people are
Trying to
not.
split an infinitive.
Zoom is restored.
Do we
Okay.
have
We have
people?
George Bentley in the audience.
okay, so if George would like to comment on either of these items, which has already gone before the Board of Selectmen numerous times and before us once.
George is not raising his hand.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to close the public hearing.
There we go.
Okay. Thank you, George. Not you, George. Anyway, so I will take another motion now.
I'll make a motion to adjourn before we really start losing our sanity.
So we're getting pretty giddy right now. We got a second for that?
Okay, second.
Oh, my God.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. We're adjourned.